Welcome back, mamas. Today we have two very exciting and special guests. We have Darick and Lori Ammons. They are here today. They are here to talk about marriages and how to be successful in marriage. They have counseled couples over the years, and they also have their own testimony in a marriage coming from where they came from to now and how, I guess, what they've learned over the years. And the title of this podcast is I Wish Someone Would Have Told Us About in regards to marriage. So
Amen.
we're so excited to have them. They're Eric's first cousins. And I just know this podcast is going to hit home with a lot of people, myself included. Also, Samantha brought her husband, Jonathan Capstick, in on this. I don't know if did you have a choice, Jonathan, or did she say, hey, you're doing this?
I just walked in the door and somehow I'm on this little couch right now. So
I texted you before.
But just to know,
That
they
truth comes out.
have a very good marriage too. So it'll be a good perspective. You guys are younger than Darick and Lori at this point, and but it'll be a great podcast. So we're really excited to have you also, Jonathan. So welcome to the podcast. All right. Darick, would you want to start with an introduction, maybe where you grew up and your current occupation?
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in Findlay, Ohio, northwest side of Ohio. Currently, I'm a manager at FedEx, been there for about 17 years. So my wife, Lori, who grew up in Glendora, California, moved to Nevada at a young age. Her dad allegedly worked at Area 51 for about 35 years. So that's a separate one.
Seriously, though?
Yeah.
No way.
Okay, wait. The podcast is changing.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Who cares about marriage?
Yeah, scratch that. Aliens. We're talking about aliens.
Separate podcast. Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh yeah, he did.
So she's been making her way in real estate for the last, I don't know, half a dozen years, doing very well up until about the last year where the market's just kind of, there's not a lot going on in real estate. So that's where we are.
Awesome. Okay, Lori, we have to ask, how did you
Yeah.
and Darick meet?
Well, we we actually met in church in Las Vegas. Kurt, his younger brother, called him up and bugged him to go to the church he had been going to in Ohio. So he showed up, and I think we met the very first night you came, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you
Las
ever have to
Vegas.
pause and
You
say
did,
we
Jennifer.
met in Las Vegas and people are like, oh, okay, that figures. It's like we met in a bar, but you actually met at a church
yeah.
in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I know. It's
Gotta
because
keep
the
that in
follow-up
the story.
question is usually weird. They're like, "Oh, you met in Las Vegas, okay?" And they're thinking a bar or casino or something. I'm like, "Yeah, at church."
What
There's
couples
kind
get
of a
together in
pause, like,
Vegas stay together.
That's right.
All right, that's awesome. Okay, so let's just jump into it. Start with your marriage and maybe, having kids and where your marriage started and up into this point, maybe how anything you want to discuss about the transition of it.
Sure. So, we had a beginning to our marriage that's probably not normal. Both of us had pretty extensive lives before we started getting really serious about God and met at church. My wife already had two children before we got married, and so when we dated, we really had a strong conviction about the purity of our marriage, of our relationship. So at the end of our date on Saturday night, we would kiss once, and that was pretty much the extent of our physical
Wow.
relationship, which was quite a bit different than what we had been experiencing prior to that. And it was fantastic. We built great friendships. Things moved really, really fast. So from the day that I started going to church in April, I got baptized in July 17th. And in less than 1 year, Lori and I had met, dated, got engaged, and married from July 17th to actually today is our 30th wedding anniversary, as luck would have it. So
Wow, congratulations.
so
That's
yeah,
awesome.
30 years today. So kind of cool that we're on this today of all
Yeah.
days. So
Wow.
we had a really cool experience in that the people who were doing our marriage counseling or premarital counseling were just great friends of ours that we trusted and loved. In the days leading up to our marriage, we had what was called an openness talk, to where we just kind of talk about everything that we hadn't been talking about, just our paths and really getting open with stuff. And so, I mean, as aloof and out of touch as I am, and I definitely am, and we'll talk about that a lot. during the openness talk, what was really important to me is that my wife knew that that was a past life, that she'd been forgiven. That's all history. And so during the openness talk, when she's telling me about things that she had experienced and been through, it wasn't connecting with me at all. The hurts and the pains and the scars that she was going to bring into our marriage. And she's wonderful. She was wonderful then. She's even more wonderful now. But nobody told me, hey, Darick, back off on going and making disciples and just really trying to change the world. Spend time with your wife and help her and really build your marriage.
Wow.
And we really missed out on that. And so it took us quite a few years, and we had phenomenal couples in our life, one after another. And if you know the church we go to, discipling, mentorship is just a huge part of what we do. And so nobody has failed us for, the 30 years we've been married and had all these great couples in our lives, but nobody really understood what we needed. And I think what probably most couples really need. It was several years down the road. Lori was really feeling a lot of things, and we'll probably have to come back and kind of touch up some of this stuff. But Lori was feeling a lot of things. She started going to a group called Spiritual Discovery. Actually, it's been a bunch of different things since then. And I was kind of perplexed by that. So, let me just get really open, and this is how we are, and this is how we're open we are with couples. Yeah. In the years prior to her going to there was an extended amount of time where I loved my wife and my wife loved me, but we were really, really having a hard time. And I would pray often, like nearly every night for an extended amount of time, that God take her. If she's a disciple, if she's right with you, then take her, because she's just never happy. And I didn't know what to do to make her happy, and for me, we had a great house, we have a great family, we have 4 children, by the way, who now are all married, and all of them doing incredibly well. We couldn't be more proud of them. But things just seemed like they were going so well, but yet she just really struggled.
Did that come back on you like you were failing her, or was it not like that? Like you just couldn't do anything right, or did you identify that you thought it was on her end?
Great question. Part of what we'll learn, and again, what I'll talk about, is how out of touch and aloof I was. So really very engaged in church activities and studying the Bible with people and just going and going and going, but very much out of touch with how much my wife is needing. So I don't think I saw myself as being the problem at all. Actually, I kind of thought I was killing it as a husband. And yeah, I was killing it. And my poor wife was just struggling. And so as she's going to spiritual discovery and really kind of understanding some things about herself and really starting to kind of peel back some of the things that she had just kind of pushed away, started having some incredible victories. And so she'd come home and there's a joy about her and there's a piece about her that I hadn't seen. And I'd be like, oh, honey, that's awesome. And I wasn't like ranting and raving. It was just acknowledgement that I could see that she is making changes. And for her, that was like putting fuel on a fire. As she started to hear me complimenting her on stuff rather than being critical about things, which we will talk about more, hopefully. She started realizing and putting together that maybe I was different than other men. And this is many, many, many years after we've been married. But, some of these voices that women seem to have, they don't go away. And so us guys, we just think our wives are awesome. If you ask about a guy about his wife, oh, she's awesome. That's really what we believe and know. But we don't understand that there's so many negative thoughts going on in so many women's minds, and
we're complicated,
very complicated.
We're soft too.
Our worst critics.
Yeah, and we are. But we have a complicated mind. Men they have the nothing box. They go from task to task and they can shut down. We're always self-analyzing, thinking about previous conversations and, letting a little hurt from 2 years ago get stirred up again. We're complicated, but I always say on the flip side, we're so soft and we're so gentle and we're so caring. How God made us.
Yeah, no, my wife is that for sure. Fast forward several years, my wife had been through several rotations and had really changed a lot. And I mean, our marriage had really started to change a lot. And so for me, I realized, hey, we really need one of these classes for men. I'm going to go through this. I didn't really feel a need for it for myself. A lot of it is addiction type stuff and just, a lot of that kind of thing that I would really struggling with
codependency,
Yeah.
addictions.
So it gets pretty deep, but I knew several men, in my life who could really use some help. So fast forward several years, my wife is doing amazing. Our marriage had really changed, and I realized that we really need one of these for our men. And so I went through the class. It's months long class, and you're taking homework and doing stuff. And I was just having incredible epiphanies about marriage. It wasn't really what I went for or what I anticipated getting out of it. But it just really felt like God was speaking to me and putting together things that seemed so simple, but prior to that, I just did not understand at all. And so that's kind of where we are now with the couples we've been, getting with, which are many.
Coming out of that class, each of you, is there something that stands out the most that was the biggest epiphany?
Gosh, we've done this kind of thing
Do you
so
wanna
many
think
times.
about yours?
Yeah,
I
go
know
ahead.
what mine is.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, mine for sure. The biggest kind of aha moment or light bulb or whatever you want to call it was that I found the first couple rotations that I did, I was very much walls up, not emotional about it. I honestly would sometimes critique other women in the class and look at them like, really? Why are you so emotional about that? Or
Yeah.
why is that, you know, making you cry? Well, I just didn't realize that I had spent so many years building my walls up that it was like I wasn't even connecting with how those things related to me,
Wow.
and there are various lessons. It's everything from having an addict in the family to having a spouse or a family member that's codependent on you and how not to enable them. So it's a vast variety of lessons. But what I came out of it with was like, hey, I need to know at the end of the night when I put my head down on my pillow that I did everything the way God intends me to do it and the way the Bible tells me to do it, regardless if I feel like my husband deserved that respect or being treated in that
That's
manner,
good.
because that's what God calls me to do, not, oh, well, he had a good week and he was nice to me this week, so I'll respect him this week.
Yeah.
And it was like God was saying, no, no, you worry about you. You do the things that I tell you to do in my word. And then
So
you
basically,
make
your
sure you and I
attitude
are good.
changed. Your
Yeah,
attitude changed, and it's not like you even had to come tell him, "Hey, my attitude's changing." He just noticed a
right.
difference in you, and then he started acting different and probably fulfilling your needs better, right? There's so many
Yeah.
women out
And
there that are
yes,
like, "Well, I'll go to church. I'll spend this time and effort and work counseling, but my husband won't." But this is a good
right,
point that they can still do something.
right. Yeah. I had to make sure I was right with God and that I felt good about giving my all, because in the end, if we ended up apart, I had to know that, hey, God, I gave it everything I had.
Yeah, good.
It's funny because gosh, we do this kind of lesson in a way. We've actually had Friday Devos for quite a while, or we called them date nights, where we'd have 6 or 7 couples over and we would kind of go through a similar thing. So to get asked questions is that should be helpful, and for some reason it's kind of making my brain scramble. So I think what I learned is the 3 things that we talked to you about is just what my wife needs, and it really kind of got more clear, but I can't connect it to the class on how we came up with this. But for my wife to feel protected was a big one. She would say all the time that she didn't feel protected, and for me that made no sense. And then maybe every guy out there is like, well, of course I know what that means. I had no idea what that meant, and I would say, don't laugh. Well, all right, go ahead and laugh at me, honey. We got a gun in the closet. The doors are locked. We live in a safe neighborhood. What do you mean you don't feel protected? You don't feel safe? It didn't make any sense to me at all. And obviously, she was talking about emotionally with, just different people who made her feel certain ways, and I wasn't standing up for her, and that was a big one. And then for her to really feel cherished and treasured, and I was so quick to be very critical about tiny little things, and I wasn't trying to be overly critical. I was just trying to enlighten her, I guess. Hey, honey, we don't really need to put that much peanut butter on the sandwich. Times are tight right now. Do you really need to use 2 dryer sheets? And just silly
These
little
are
stuff.
true things that he
Yeah.
literally asked me, so he's not like
Yeah.
pulling it out of the air.
Yeah.
Oh,
We
I
had
think
those
Samantha needs to
conversations.
comment.
And so what
What?
would happen is,
That is us
okay,
to a T.
Really?
And I take
Right.
it so like I'm doing everything wrong, and then he's more like, oh, I'm just trying to be helpful or like give you insight or like
And truly, he
it's
probably
like,
is, right?
You only
Trying
have
to
to
be
use
absolutely.
one
Oh, for
square
Yeah.
of clothing. No, I'm just kidding.
ew.
A half a square.
Yeah. So, what's funny is there was a thing about, husbands leading their wives and how to disciple your wives and stuff. And we've just kind of kicked that out. And my wife doesn't want to hear criticisms from me at all. She wants to know she is stunningly beautiful, and it just so happens that she is. Just everything about her that is my favorite place and favorite thing and favorite time. And that's what she is.
Yeah.
And I think as we started to really treasure our relationship, and just looked at leading in a very different way, leading like we are going somewhere. There's an intentional path that we're going. If I can kind of change gears a little bit, if you think about Paul, he said he was the worst of disciples. He was the most sinful, because of the way he treated the disciples. I really think God has called us because Lori's past is about as challenging as anybody's going to hear. Her testimony is super intense. And I'm about as aloof and out of touch and just clueless, as a guy can be. And so we're the extremes. And so it's pretty rare for us to come across a couple who's on the extreme spectrum of what it is we're trying to help, people to understand.
Would that mean you came from a simpler childhood and don't have any traumas in your past? Is that I mean, obviously it takes one to know one. So I can understand how couples like you might not statistically make it because of you just being your reality was so different and hers
Yeah,
being so
exactly.
different.
Yeah, I really had no idea what trauma was at all. And I had never experienced really trauma in any kind of way in my life. And so for Lori to have so much trauma, and that was part of what we were connecting through the spiritual discovery, is the trauma and what that means and how that affects her and how that voice and the tape come back. And there's just all of those lessons kind of made sense, in our marriage and how we can, change our marriage. So
I think you learned a lot about triggers. I think you
yes.
learned a lot about, like, I would use words that were in the vernacular of the lessons in the book, and he'd be like, what? I don't even know what that means. So when we were able to use the same terminology when we were discussing us or someone else or a situation, it was way easier after he went through it to him to understand what I was trying to say.
And
And I
then
think
finally
he
you
looked
felt
at it.
validated.
Yeah, and I think he looked at it less like you're failing, you stink, you're a terrible husband. I don't think he heard it all like that, like he would in the past, because he was with a group of other guys that were saying, no, no, no. I used to think that too. That's not what she's saying.
Yeah.
That part is actually not accurate. We never talked about it in class. It was all.
Oh, you did it?
No, we didn't talk
Okay.
about the wives at all.
Oh, there you go.
So, but either way, yeah, I
Either
mean,
way, you connected it more.
yeah, that
Yeah.
just made sense to me. And, again, almost every time she was trying to express to me that she was hurting and really needed me to help her, what I was hearing is you're failing and you're, just not a good man, fill in the blanks of different things I was hearing. And so it really, everything that transpired after that, we were just completely disconnected as she continues to try to get the point through to me, and it just continues to make me feel horrible. And so when we were able to put that together and make sense out of, she is telling me that she's hurting and scared and nervous, that changed it for me. Oh, she needs a hero. I can be a hero. I can do that. And it just changed us. Yeah.
I have something I can share too, between our marriage. If there's ever a time, and it's usually, just a few times a year, I just have a moment of like, I can't handle all this anymore. I'm done. I need help. I need help. Where's my helper? And then I'll ask Eric because he's so busy. He coaches 2 travel baseball teams, works full time down in the city, all those things. So granted all that, but I have my moments and I'm like, I'm suffering. I'm overwhelmed. I just need, that's kind of what you said. I need a hero. I need him to come in and just lighten the load and help me out and let me know that he cares. So anytime I approach it with him, which we can have a conversation, he's very peaceful and gentle as you know him, but he always goes right to, I'm a failed husband. And I'm like, I'm literally, and you can't see me on video, but my hands are up like, what? How did you go from me saying I need help to that? But that's why I love that we're having this conversation. Can you, Darick, enlighten us on why men maybe go that way?
Yeah. I wish I knew. I don't know why that is. We talk about the differences between men and women often, but where that comes from, I don't know.
So
I would
if I
like to know
was
that
to
too.
ask Eric for help, what could I say that would maybe prevent him from going there? Do I start with hey, I'm so thankful for whatever, and do I just put it on me, like my feelings? I'm really, really struggling. I'm feeling low, and is there anything that you think that I could say in order to not make him go there? Because I hate when he goes there. He's my everything. Like, I never, ever want you to feel that way.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's such a great question. So one of the things that we talk about with couples is kind of learning the path. If they can understand where these things happen and what's being heard, then when it's happening, maybe they can get back to center more quickly. I think it's, hey, this has nothing to do with you. In every way, I'm just hurting. And I think it's very difficult for anybody when they're in a time when they're hurting and feeling a lot of things to then get more vulnerable, because that's the scary place, right? So when you're scared and nervous, to get more vulnerable and to say, I'm hurting here, I need help, that's hard to do. And opposite for the guys, when we're feeling like we're offended or our feelings are hurt, that's a difficult time for us to say, hey, is what you just said this?
Right.
And we're teaching this stuff, and I struggle with that. I mean, just really feeling like, what do you want me to do? Because we're so solution oriented. When she has a problem, I want to be able to give her the answer. And when she's telling me I'm the problem, what do I do with that?
Or when you're hearing that
Yeah,
you're the problem.
exactly. When I'm hearing that I'm the problem rather than
Right.
that's what she's saying.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a really good friend from church who's a counselor, and she has had a lot of success lately with doing like the EMDR and stuff like that with some of the men and women that she's experienced in her career. And we had her teaching us like a leaders workshop of, the group that Derek's talking about. 'Cause now another girl, one of my best friends and I teach a session. And the funny thing was, she hit it right on the head when she said, if you're able to stop in the moment, and it's not easy, but if you're able to stop and be like, this has nothing to do with you, like me speaking to Darick.
Yeah.
But right now, I feel like I'm back in that fight or flight trauma situation. Like,
yeah,
it just, your mind puts you there, and physically you have the responses if you are there. So if I'm able to stop myself or slow myself down enough to explain to him that it's not something you did, you're not failing in any area, but right now I'm really feeling this, like I'm in this critical situation. So I know I'm overreacting, or I know my response was over the top, but give me a little time to process it and we can talk about it later. Because I know 9 times out of 10, my over the top reaction, which had nothing to do with him or anything he'd done to me, was taken as, oh, just another area where I'm blowing it with her.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys know this, you probably do, and you do a great job of this podcast, by the way.
Thank you.
The difference between women's brains and men's brains are so different, and we are different. And the culture wants to say we're the same, and that's just so not true. We are really, really different. And painting with a very broad brush, because every couple is unique, every woman is unique, every man is unique, every dynamic is unique. But because women have what we call spaghetti brains, where everything is connected, it's all going on all the time.
Yeah.
And my wife is thinking about me literally all day long, but it's only part of what she's thinking about.
Yeah.
I can go several hours without thinking about my wife at all, because whatever I'm doing, I'm waffle brained. That means I'm in that task and that task only. And so I've really been working hard, and it's really hard, and it seems so simple to you ladies, but for us men, it's really hard to change gears and to try to just have a communication throughout the day with my wife. So one thing we've worked really hard, and we try to encourage men to do, is to really try to rewire their brains a little bit, so that way they don't leave for work in the morning 100% enveloped in their day, and then get home and, okay, now I'm wife brain or family brain. And that's really made a huge difference for us, because now we've had a romance all day long, every day.
Aw,
and
I love that.
so no longer is my first text in the morning or at some point during the day, hey, don't forget to pay the electric bill.
Guilty.
It is. Yeah, we don't send those at all. Yeah. So now it's, hey, beautiful, hope you have a great day. She'll
Jonathan,
respond,
I got to cue Jonathan in here. Jonathan, you might have missed it. Jonathan had to step out for a
I heard it.
second. Okay. Jonathan
Okay.
excels at this, and
That's awesome.
he
Way to go.
Oh, no,
I
you're good.
think always has, but I mean, it is the mushy gushy like my mom and dad
I love
pretty
it.
much all day because I'm with Samantha a lot. So, Jonathan, have you
I don't
always
think
been that way?
I don't know. I guess so. And there's
I
definitely a
think
lot of like
definitely-
realistic stuff mixed in there too. Like,
Sure.
don't forget to cash that check and don't
Yeah.
forget to do all that. But
No, I feel like over the years we've gotten a lot better at it, and we've done like marriage books and different things, and
Good.
I think it's like improved over the years.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it's kind of been like a book.
honestly, I don't think it's intentionality. I think it's like the things that we've done, the books we've read, the conferences we've gone to, the more
Right.
we've just like really fallen in love. I just want, that's what I'm thinking. It's what I'm wanting to say. I'm not going,
That's
oh,
awesome.
forget my timer went off and I need to send her a nice message now. It's
Right.
actually true. So
Yeah.
So you both
I
of
love
you
that.
couples are testaments of that. It didn't just happen. I love how you pointed that out. It doesn't just happen naturally. Marriage is hard, and you both have stopped, analyzed the marriage situation and have made steps to improve it. And I think that is something we have been lacking in our marriage is, we had a Sadie situation. We had a lot of things to move,
Mhm.
new jobs and everything.
Absolutely.
But we used to be a part of couples groups, and we used to, we've done some marriage counseling and stuff like that. Thankful for where we're at despite that. But I know
Mhm.
Samantha and I have talked about the little texts throughout the day or whatever. I'm so task oriented that I'm in a way like a man during the day sometimes too, or he'll come home and I know there's times where I
Right.
should just be like jumping up, and it's just my,
Right.
every couple's different too. So I
Mhm.
know that's something that we could, not that we have a bad marriage, but we could enhance it. So
For sure. Yeah, no, there's so many lessons, and it'd be impossible. This is
Right.
I don't even know how long it would take for us to touch all the different topics.
Well, and there's so many different seasons too. Like
Sure.
you're at a
Yes.
point where if you do have a lot of stuff going on with the kids, and like you said, Eric's coaching 2 teams and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Same with us when we had 4 kids in different sports and 3 different schools. And so,
Yeah.
you sometimes it goes by the wayside, or you have an infant and you're
Yes.
doing good to actually get 5 words into each other and get a shower that day. You know what I mean? So
That's okay.
there's
Yeah.
it's all okay as long as you realize that that's just the season you're in, and don't like build everything around the negatives of it. You got to remember the positives of it too.
So to bring the topic back to full circle, if somebody had explained to me, invest in your wife, love your wife, treasure your wife, romance your wife, have that kind of marriage, and empowered me to understand that, we could have saved 10 or 15 years of being just on 2 different pages so often. And so, it's super encouraging to hear you guys talking about your books and going to marriage retreats and different things. Cause I unfortunately it's the men who normally are really hands off of that kind of stuff, and it just sounds kind of overwhelming. But it can change your marriage so much. And it's laughable that I'm the one who's being interviewed for a podcast for our marriage, because nobody's more clueless than I am. Nobody's more out of touch, passive.
If we could
just
have seen the Darick 20 years ago, he would be like, no way. Lori's like,
I mean,
praise
sure.
the Lord.
Right. We always tell people, hey, let us cut 15 years of just craziness out of your marriage by letting us tell you things we wish someone would have said to us then.
Or maybe you have an okay marriage, but it can always be better. It's just like knowing God, knowing the Lord, or being refined as a person. You can always climb that mountain higher.
I was going to say, I don't think either one of us would have said it back then. Our marriage was bad. We would have both said, no, we have a great marriage. But it's just, you're trying to do this, and you both were, we're Christians. We love the Lord. We have a great family. We knew all those things, but man, there were just so many times where it was just so tough, and it just didn't need to be.
We once heard at a marriage retreat, like one of our first ones, that if you're not working on your marriage, you're working on your divorce. And so that kind of like stuck with us throughout the years. And just the idea of if we're not moving forward in it, you never just stay where you're at, like with your relationship with God. Like if you're not moving forward, then you're moving backward. So it's kind of been our motto.
It's awesome. Very cool.
I think for me, a lot of what I realized is I was almost in a way starting to apologize for my marriage, because I'd be at work or anywhere, and you feel like you're different. So these women be complaining about their husbands, and I'd just be quiet because I'm like, why am I being quiet? I shouldn't be embarrassed that we have a good marriage.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm sorry you guys are criticizing your husbands, and we've had plenty of that in our past. I'm just saying, like, it's okay to say, oh yeah, we've been there. Let me know if you ever want
Right.
to talk, because guys only want to talk so much. It's like, if you can find a friend or a coworker or something that you can help, because honestly their husband doesn't want to hear 50,000 words when they get home from work, then it's just more helpful. It's just more encouraging. It's supposed to be our kingdom, is supposed to be our rest when we get home, and the
Yeah.
last thing the other person wants is 15 criticisms to one nice compliment or one nice word.
Yeah, and sometimes we're quiet, I think, when we hear of somebody struggling through something, because we almost feel bad, because thankfully, thank God, that hasn't been our lot. But how are they supposed to hear what normal marriage, like not
Right.
normal, what a good marriage looks like? So
Right.
I love that point. Are you two open to share about intimacy and the importance of that?
Mm-hmm.
We're open to talk about anything. We've been pretty open books with a lot of people. So yeah, I mean, for us, the lovey-dovey texts, and our kids are all going to start plugging their ears now. I mean, our
They're
texts
adults now.
sometimes,
That's okay.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
sometimes I'm
You gotta
eager to
get
get
used to
home.
it.
I mean, my wife knows what to say to me. I've really learned how to massage a text pretty well
Jonathan's
to be able
pointing
to
to
get through to her.
Samantha.
And it's so much fun. I mean, I just think about all those years. Now, obviously, we couldn't text when we were at the beginning of marriage, or we didn't have cell phones, but
Back when dinosaurs roamed the earth.
yeah.
Technology.
The
But I mean,
1900s.
we do. Yeah. I mean, we really, really enjoy our marriage when we're not together, because, so much of our time is spent apart at work and in different things. And that's been huge for us. So as far as intimacy goes, we're well into our 50s, and we're not slowing down any, that's for sure.
It took me until Eric and I were married 16 years when we were in a couples group. I've shared this on the podcast earlier, but just to catch somebody up that hasn't heard it, it took me 16 years to realize in a couples group setting that the men were saying that is the way they feel loved. And I'm like, what? Makes no sense. What about cuddling and holding my hand and, hugging me when you get home? He's like my husband, like, no, straight up don't care.
Yeah, it makes total
But he's
sense.
like, that is actually how I feel loved,
Yep.
and instead of, you think a man just wants it to, whatever. It's
Mhm.
not that. They really need that connection. And then,
Mhm.
there's so much fruit of that. And it's something that I think it needs said. I feel like, especially, I don't want to say this, like non-Christian friends that I've had over the years, they'll have babies. They follow a different playbook, so to speak, of the
Yeah.
world
Mhm.
and the secular playbook. And it's like, well,
Mhm.
ain't got time for that. Oh, he XYZ,
Mhm.
whatever. And I'm like, whoa, in my mind, you can't do that. Your marriage is going
Right.
to crumble.
Mhm.
So I think that's just worth noting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you're exactly right. That's one of the things we say is that men need sex to feel loved, and vice versa. Women need to feel loved to have sex. And
Yes.
so
Yep.
if we've got this incredible connection throughout the day,
Mhm.
then the evenings are easy. That's not a challenge anymore whatsoever. And now it is easier because we're at a different stage of life, and our
Sure.
kids are grown, and so we don't have the distractions and the
Right.
challenges and the all the drama that's going on with children. But I still feel like we could have done much, much better, and did toward the ending.
Mhm.
When our younger kids were still in their early teens, our marriage is quite a bit different by that time. So yeah, it's incredibly important. I mean, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So you've listed feeling protected, and then you listed, what was your second point? Feeling desired or adored?
Cherished,
Yeah,
treasured.
those are
Yeah,
great words.
treasured. Yeah.
Treasured or cherished, really honestly, whatever resonates with the wife. And so, my wife wants to feel like, and she is this, by the way, that she is just my favorite thing in life.
Yeah, we want to
Um,
feel that way. Me
Me
too.
heck yeah. Yeah. And so,
Yep.
for many, many years, although I understood these things, they weren't really practiced, and that's probably not what I actually felt. I mean, hey, when it's bedtime, now I feel that way, but
Yeah.
we've just become so connected, um, that she is. I mean, I think about her all the time. I'm so impressed with what you guys were saying, because you're way ahead of us age-wise and where we were.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Oh, way ahead. And so, that's encouraging. So we really talk about just the husbands being intentional, and really what that looks like is just protecting my wife, cherishing my wife, treasuring. The words you use are great words. And then lastly is just spiritually led, that we're going somewhere, that this is, we're not just kind of hanging out and wondering, we are getting each other to heaven. I think a lot of times we kind of look at life as like this rosy, nice thing. And Nikki, you can certainly understand this.
Yeah.
We really encourage couples to think of being out on the battlefield by yourself, and along comes somebody else who's got a different set of tasks and skills, that you can bring together to get better. Now you're not on the battlefield alone anymore, and you're going through fighting Satan together. And if you guys survive it, that's what this life is. It's not meant to be, all easy and whatever. That's just not what it is. And we try to make it that, and it doesn't fit.
Yeah, that's true.
You had mentioned men being more reluctant to take those classes, and I would even go as far to say men are more reluctant with, I guess, their faith and getting involved in it in the church and all that. Always seems like the women are pulling their husbands to those places. And even my husband noticed that. Interestingly, just being at church, we've talked about it multiple times. Darick, why do you think that is? And how does a woman out there that, is striving to know God and know all these things, do all the right things, but maybe their husband isn't quite there?
You may. I think that kind of gets back to the dynamics in, the church you're in. There's so many different things. I think the church that we're a part of, we've got quite a few men that I very much respect and have for quite a few years. I know for myself that when, hey, let's go over and have a discipling time or get with another couple about, marriage help. That's I don't want any part of that. And then we go to retreat, and the retreats would be awesome. But as soon as the message would start, we'd be maybe 1 minute into it. The most surfacey. Yeah, I'm completely overwhelmed. It's like, I got to take my wife out every week on a date. Oh my gosh. And I mean, I'm so overwhelmed by the smallest challenge, and I don't know why that is. I don't know why we get that way. But there's certainly something there. And it's not that men don't want to be great. We just really don't. We know how to be great in other things. We've grown up playing sports. We've grown up doing all these things, and we know how to do those. And so when it comes to doing something we don't know how to do, not just our wives, it's just anything. If I'm not very good at masonry, I don't want to do masonry. I don't know how to do it. But
Also don't think a male figure in this day and age, like if you're good at sports, if you're successful in your career, but if you're a good, godly male Christian, I don't know that is, I think it's perceived in the wrong way, which it's not. Like I look up to those men, but I think society has a different stigma on there, and I don't know if that is one of the barriers.
I think it's just like that awkward, like, I don't know, like you were saying, like not your strong suit, or it's harder, like it's easy for women to talk. And so I think that like Bible studies and all that, like go easier for the women. It just comes naturally. Men are just kind of like, the questions arise and they're like, yeah, because of God.
I think all those things just kind of make,
like,
I don't know. I think a lot of times those retreats and classes and things you're learning about marriage stuff, and makes you feel like you're failing, like you talked about earlier.
Oh, wow.
It just makes you see you don't want to go do it because you don't feel good about yourself in the middle of it. And if you're not doing all those things, now the guys that are doing all those things are all about it. And I think that's where you feel inferior, and you're in a room with a group of guys that all are probably great at doing that, and you feel like you're the only one that isn't doing it right.
That is a great perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And John, we just met 10 minutes ago, so we don't know you, but I can easily see that you're far ahead of most as far as just being connected and intentional, because it doesn't come easy for us. And so if you're feeling that, obviously some of us who really aren't connected like that or intentional like I can see you being, it is very overwhelming. It's not an easy thing. And so how do we get men involved and show them the fruits of it, and help it to be relatable and not some completely overwhelming thing.
Right.
And I think too, maybe guys, he won't say this because, he's very humbled in this area, but I think he is extremely good at being intentional with like just little, like the smallest things, just being consistent and doing it every day, not necessarily taking huge lumps like or jumps in things. Like sometimes, not sometimes, I tend to be like an all or nothing, go hard.
Right.
He's really good about like just a little bit each day grows. But even though like I feel like he's an amazing leader and like husband and father and stuff, it's like we'll listen to a sermon at church and like our pastor was like, "Man, are you leading your family?" He's like, "Man, I really feel like I'm not leading my family." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like,
Right.
Mhm.
you're a great example, but I think that men can hold themselves to, and I guess women can too, unrealistic expectations in areas, or no matter like how good I think he is in that area, he's like
Yeah.
still like, "Oh, I'm just sucking in this," and I'm like, "What?"
Right.
So maybe that's it too, never feeling like you know, for
Yeah.
guys, like I think they just put themselves that bar at such a high
Yeah.
standard that it's just not realistic. So then they always feel like they're doing terrible, even when they're great at that thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have enough time to talk about this topic for sure, but I think a lot of what we've done in our country and maybe throughout it is we've made the man to be like, out in front and the wives back behind supporting. And I really think in a lot of ways, it's the exact opposite of that. My wife is incredibly dynamic. She outshines me all the time. Then we get on something like this and I do all the talking. But she, when we're leaving for church, she can't get enough gifts together and she's thinking about all these different people and she's
Yeah.
doing all these different things for all these different people. I can't even come close to doing that kind of stuff. And so for us in our leadership, it's more about creating that environment and helping our wives to feel secure and loved and cherished. Because when you do, they just run with it. And I think sometimes we get overwhelmed because the task seems much, much harder than what it really is. They just want to know that, hey, you are incredible.
Yeah.
And when they feel that, and then you, both of you ladies are great examples of this. Turn you loose and let you go because you
Right.
guys are going to do things us men are never going to pull off. And it's, you know,
Like
and I
Samantha
want,
said, Samantha said this on a podcast. I think it just was released earlier today. She said her mom was so good at being a loving person, but also so good at saying, you can do it. Like, you're great at this. You're great at this. You're great at that. And so being outside the confines of her house now with her husband, if you have somebody just
Mhm.
like you're saying, that would give me wings. And Eric's very good about that. There are some times where he's like, on the podcast, you could blah blah. And I'm like, don't say that. I can't take it. I know I'm not a public speaker. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I do see how that, it really just like it's like how you train your kids, right? You don't want to set
Mhm.
you want to set the highest of bar, like unlimited, like abilities. And, I believe in you, right? Because like you said, also, we are so hard on ourselves anyways. We're always feeling like we're failing. You might be sitting there watching the baseball game. We're like, well, I yelled at him this morning. I can't keep up with the laundry like she does. Oh my gosh, look how cute she is looking at this baseball game now. And look at me, Miss Frumpy, and my car is a mess. So it just when we have somebody that's
So true.
lifting us up and getting us out of those
Yeah.
thoughts, it's so good.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And husbands, we are very different in that women really need to feel wanted. They need to feel desired and lusted over and all those kind of things. And
Wives.
and wives, yes, for sure. What did I say?
Women.
Oh, well, no, but there is,
Well,
I
That's
mean,
it.
and even when you were talking about, some of the things you're feeling, you're comparing your looks to somebody else. And I think we're very quick,
Yeah.
especially in the Christian community, to say that's sinful or wrong way. No, that's exactly how you're designed. Women are designed to be looked at by their husbands, and to be desired. And you guys have that need to feel that. And so, it's balancing it and learning how to do that in a way that's, that everybody's feeling like, it's an exciting marriage. And it is, it's fun for me to chase my wife and she enjoys being chased. And so,
Yeah.
you know,
Do you have, we just have a couple more minutes. Do you have any consistent themes of what you see when you do the marriage counseling that we haven't touched on? Like recurring issues?
yeah, sadly, and I'm as guilty as anybody. Our wives, they're really, really hurt, and we have really caused a lot of trauma, in the girls in getting married, And so I think that men can kind of think that, oh, she put on a false front, and that's not true. Women are genuinely excited about, having a man who loves them and is going to take care of them and treasure them, and godly man, all that. But those voices, they're in there, and all those triggers and all of those times of trauma come back in us men. So we call it the grizzly bear when all of a sudden I come in, I put my keys down, and my wife is a grizzly bear in the kitchen, and the grizzly bear wants a hug, and that makes no sense to me whatsoever.
I tell Eric it's magic if I'm screaming at you, like, come, like, hold me, like. And
Yeah,
Samantha
that's
like,
awesome that you said that.
well, but Samantha goes a step further. Samantha, you want to share what you like to do?
No.
No.
Jonathan.
So this like started as like a total joke. We are pretty dramatic. Like I once saw a TikTok, like when your husband gets home, how you greet him and his day. So like we're pretty dramatic. Like when he gets home, like, he like picks me up or whatever. Well, one day I was like really stressed and he like, I don't know, it was like picked me up but then he was like kind of rocking. And so then I was like, oh, I really like this. So if I'm like stressed out, I'll just be like, oh. Sometimes like our kids, well, we're always trying to gross out our kids, but their friends will be
That's
over and be like, what are you doing? And like just rock me, and then like sometimes they'll put me down, like, no, I'm not done yet. Like just wait. But
We're
I
always
don't
trying to
know.
gross out
It's
our
just
kids.
really-
So did that always work then? It works for Samantha and I. So did that always work, Lori, when he hugged you when you were being a grizzly bear?
Oh, I left. There's a grizzly bear in my kitchen. I'm leaving.
Once he started hugging me, of course, but he would be like, oh, I think I have to go mow the lawn. But he wouldn't stick around.
And so
Face
what would
the
happen
grizzly
is
bear.
then she would then turn into a bigger grizzly bear to make sure she really got the point across. And now I'm like,
You're
okay,
like-
now I'm going to completely leave the house
It's like, why don't you understand? I need a hug.
Eric, are you listening to this?
So we try to help the women to understand that's a horrible strategy. If it's a hard day, if you could just communicate that rather than look how frustrated I am, because frustrated means I'm doing something wrong and I don't want to be here.
It's hard, but I think women can think about it like, have you ever tried to save a cat from water?
Oh yeah.
And they're just clawing the crud out of you. Did you like it? No, you didn't like it. Remember that.
The man automatically goes into this, like, at least for me, it's like my mood goes down the drain. I'm defensive. It's like you walk into like negativity.
Yeah.
Boom. Now you're probably it's just gonna breed so much worse than if you can somehow just talk it out. And that's just really hard with emotion to be able to control that. But even if there's nothing going on between us, even if Samantha's just frustrated with the kids when I come home, I'm like driving home, I'm like, all right, cool, I'm gonna go home in a good mood. And then I come in and just like stand in the background of like this frustration, fight, battle, whatever. And I'm already like, ooh, like totally drained and negativity. So
yeah.
So it's definitely not going to help things when there's that grizzly bear there. There's got to be some way to have a different front so that you don't automatically have the other person in the same position you are, and then nothing good's going to happen.
Yeah.
And here's a gold nugget that I wish I would have learned a long time ago. When you come home and it's chaos, don't say, honey, we're Christians. We're supposed to be great examples to the kids. You got to stop yelling and screaming. That's a mistake. It took me a long time. What you say
in front of the kids.
What you say is, kids, I don't know what you have done to get my wife like this, but you need to get out of here and take the side of your wife. And this is so easy, but nobody told me this stuff. And man, it was many years of me reacting incorrectly on that one. Many years.
You talk about it private later.
You're all grounded from the indoors for the next 25 minutes.
Right. Go outside.
Yes. Backyard, friend's house. I don't care. Get out of here.
Yeah, John, I could have got a lot of advice from you a long time ago. You would have been like 12, but either way, it would have been good.
You would have been.
How about making time? What if you're in the busy season, it still doesn't forgo having quality time? What do you say for people of how important that is?
Well, I think Christians will understand that put God first, put your wife second, and it makes sense practically, or it makes sense like in our minds, but what that really looks like needs to be a lot more. We are huge fans of PDA. I mean, more holding hands, more kissing, all of it, and I think that we are having our romance all day long, all day. And if it's offensive to people, then maybe they should get a relationship with God and start to imitate what we have, because we have something special. But instead, what happens is we get so task oriented and we're just trying to get stuff done that we forget, we leave God out, we leave our romance out. And so easier said than done for sure.
Sure.
But I think that, you just constantly come back to, how is our romance? And did you feel loved, cherished? Did you feel treasured? Did you feel protected? And asking those questions. And when you ask those questions, hey, do you feel cherished? 1 to 10, do you feel cherished? That's a time for us to communicate and for me to understand, not for you to bash me.
Right.
And I think all of that plays together. It's just constantly, putting your marriage up and honoring your marriage and making it fun. It doesn't have to be, I really don't like when people say you have to work hard at marriage. Just make it fun.
I think really quickly what you said earlier about sometimes people, whoever, the world, Christians, doesn't matter, say, oh, well, I'm in the time where my kids need to be my focus. They need to be most important. It's like you're setting yourself up for disaster because you're already taking a lot of time away from your spouse. And to be like, well, that's just where I'm at. I'm sorry, no, because I always tell women, you know what? That kid's going to grow up and leave you. And he's not. So remember what it's going to be when the kids are older. It's just the two of you again. And that's not the time to be like, okay, now you could have some of my attention. You're welcome.
Men are hurt by it though, aren't they? I think my husband has been hurt by that.
Men are. For sure. I think most men are for sure. If they're not, maybe they're out of town a lot or something, but I'd say 99% of the guys I've talked to that we've talked to together, or just even my brothers or whatever. It's hurtful.
My husband, after Sadie's situation, she was still sleeping in our bed for 4 years now, or at that point, 3.5, 4 years. He finally came to me. You know how passive he is, but he goes, you know what? I decided I'm going to sleep out on the couch until she's out of our room. And at first I took offense, but then I thought about it and I felt so loved. I was like, oh, he really loves me. And so we transition and it's been a nice thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
I think something I was going to say off of what you said, Darick, about the communicating and voicing, like, do you feel loved and whatnot. I think it's good to do it on like mutual sides. But also for me, I've had to learn over the years, like, not to get defensive in an area. Like if the other spouse says, oh, I don't feel this, then a lot of times they'll be like, well, I've just been really busy and I've had this and this and this. And like, we take it like personal, like it's our fault. And so I think we have to just be like, take the emotion out of it and say, oh man, that sucks. I could see how you feel that way. I'm going to work on improving that this week or something.
Yeah. That's a great point.
We've learned how to say, hey, can I have a couple minutes that are just kind of vulnerable and open? And that's hard, right? But I've come to enjoy it, which is weird because that's not a safe place for me. But and it will literally look like this. We're holding each other and asking questions that are hard and because we're protecting each other. And we would never do that out in public, but when it's just the two of us and it is, hey, we're as vulnerable as we can be. It's such a safe place to be able to talk about this kind of stuff. And that's, that's probably years down the road for most, but that doesn't come easy or quick, but that's where God has helped us to get to. And that's really helped us a lot.
And real quickly, if there's something that either he or I feels is going to be very touchy or like might cause walls to go up or defensiveness, he can call my best friend and he'd be like, hey, Melissa, could you see maybe Lori was thinking when she said this, or what this happened between us? Do you have any insight into that? Could you maybe talk to her? Wow. I take it so much better from a best friend than I do from my spouse, because I mean, he could say, when you put the toothpaste cover back on the other day, you didn't really close it all the way and it's kind of dry. And I'm like, I tried it, but she can say something. I'll be like, that's so smart. Oh, Melissa, I'm going to do that. I don't know why there's a difference, but there is, at least for me.
Oh, that's good. That's great. Last question before and we want you to do a recap of your top 3 things, but when you list the 3 things, do you feel protected? Do you feel cherished and adored? And do you feel led? It seems like it's geared towards the woman. What about on the man's perspective? Is there any top things of, if you would ask a male, do you feel, is it respected, whatever? Do you have 3 things for them?
We really don't. It is respected, but the challenge with that is.
Jonathan has number 1. I think I know what that is.
No, there's just one.
I'm just kidding.
Say it. We're all thinking it.
I think it's respect and desired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say that's true.
I think that too. They're simpler than us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so true. I mean, I think for me, as I start to understand my wife, like one of the things my wife does that really makes me feel respected is when she's allowing me to know things that nobody else knows. So when we're talking, I mean, we know each other's past to details. I mean, we know deep details that neither one of us thought we would ever talk about. And I feel so respected and that she is allowing me to have those kind of things, because there's nothing hidden between us now. There used to be, you'd say something in the back of your mind, you're kind of thinking, there's something else that I'm not going to say. That's not the case anymore. We've let all of this stuff out there, and we've allowed each other to go wherever and ask whatever questions we want. And so now there's not this, I'm 90% real, but there's a 10% side that I always have to kind of protect. We don't do that anymore, and that's been huge.
That is huge. I think we find ourselves like way later than we should be awake sometimes, and just talking about stuff we've never talked about before. We've known each other for 20 years, and you're like, holy cow, I can't. And just talking about so much vulnerable stuff that you really don't want to talk about, and sometimes bringing out hurt and almost causing what you're trying to avoid for a minute, but then you're stronger through it. Maybe somebody, she's crying or whatever that is.
And then I'll be like, well, I didn't want to upset him. Like, I know, I just need to cry because it's just part of it and I'll get over it.
We've gone through
Same.
so many of these long, just hours and hours into the deepest, like, well, what I think a man thinks when this is happening and how she feels when this is happening, and just like, whoa, light bulbs, holy cow, I never knew, and just get so deep and just talk about stuff you never wanted to talk about and just keep going. We've fallen into that so many times, especially even recently, a lot. And I think it's very, very healthy. Sometimes it hurts in the moment, but it's so healthy.
Vulnerable.
Guys, I'm so impressed by you guys. Seriously. First of all, I can't believe you've known each other 20 years. You're not that old.
We met it's 22. I was 12, he was 13.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that makes a little more sense. But seriously, some of the things you guys are talking about, they're doing a lot of good stuff, and it's awesome. I mean, you're not meant to be in your 40th year of marriage and your 12th year of marriage, because that's part of the adventure, and getting to explore. And I love that I get to explore Lori's past. I love that I get to know these things and how she's wired and what she thinks, and some of the stuff is really hard to talk about, but she's allowing me to be in some of those really hard, traumatic moments.
Would you mind doing a recap of your top 3 things that you ask women, and maybe a couple like sub bullets underneath those? That way we're going to put that out there on the internet and try to get people to come to this podcast. I think it is such a strong podcast, and I knew it would be, and I'm so excited. So if you wouldn't mind just recapping those.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that, for husbands to be intentional is not nearly as hard as what we want to make it to be. Your wives, although they might not say it or put out that body language, they want to be chased. They want to be pursued. They want to be romanced, and make your marriage fun. For us men to understand what it means to protect our wives, which is, being in the moment when somebody says something hurtful. Like if, it's funny because if I say, oh, those are the best cookies I ever have, that'll offend my wife. Oh, really? Well, what about my cookies?
I know. Yes.
Yeah. And so, but if somebody else is to criticize my wife in the tiniest way, that is for me to stand up and say, that is not true, or to be there for her. And that doesn't happen often, but, just to be aware. And most of the time it happens with our kids. A lot of times, if our kids say something that's offensive, for me to take her side and not theirs, oh my gosh.
Someone says something about our kids and you don't.
Oh yeah, that's true too. If somebody says something about our kids,
Oh,
I
no.
better be in there because
I think actually where this comes into play probably most, and thankfully maybe not in your marriage, but and not in mine, in-laws. I know a lot of times women feel like it's like the baby boy that never really left the family.
Right.
They don't feel like the husband's taking sides with them.
Yeah.
That's without question the number one. I was trying to avoid that just because of the podcast, and I'm not sure who's going to hear it. There's no doubt that's number one.
Gosh, that's so funny.
Yeah. So I just cherish and treasure your wife. I mean, for me to look at my wife and to make her feel like, and truly she is this, and I wouldn't have been able to say it 15 years ago, that she is just so beautiful, so desired, so wanted, and for her to feel that way, once our wives feel that way, insecurity is a killer of marriage. I'm sure of it. I just, when our wives are insecure, there's nothing fun about marriage. There's nothing good about it. It's just hard work. And we take that so personally because when they're feeling insecure, we feel like we've done something wrong. And in fact, we just need to encourage them and love them and all those things. And boy, marriage can change so quickly. It doesn't have to be this long process. Our marriage can change quick. But just take away the insecurity of our wives and help them to feel cherished and loved, and that, hey, we're going somewhere with this. We're going to be intentional with the way I raise our children. We're getting our family to heaven. This is our our path, and this is our calling, and this is what we're doing. That brings a lot of contentment and security to our wives, because if we're just kind of going through life, we're not going anywhere. That's okay. What are we doing here? And it doesn't have to be a perfect plan. I think it's amazing how our wives are so willing to be on board with where we're going, even if it makes no sense, which is one of my favorite things about my wife.
Makes no sense.
I love that. Really good advice.
And then for wives, if you can really try to help your husbands understand that the things you're feeling are not their fault. Our wives have been through a lot long before we were around. And it's not that they want those things in there. Nobody wants to feel, I always use PTSD, or a soldier coming back from war. They don't want to react when they hear a loud bang. That's just there now. And so for us to help them get through that is what they're hoping that we can do. And it's not as hard as what we think that is. And it's, it can be very overwhelming, even for me still. But understanding that, and then helps us to get back to where we can be and to be that person for them.
Yeah, I think with the wives showing respect, regardless of, it's just like the Bible says, respect your elders, respect your parents. I don't think that's a coincidence that respect is so important. And the guys need to feel desired too. They need to feel like, man, that is my husband. I'm there 100%. Like there's not anyone else that's going to meet the needs that he has that I can meet. So I need to take that seriously. But I think the respect is huge. Just there's so much more a man can do confidently if he feels like you're going to back him up. Even if later, like, what were you thinking with this? That kind of caught me off guard. I tell him, I don't care how often he does that to me, as long as he doesn't say things in front of the kids like, honey, stop yelling, or, if he wants to say it all night long and get the Bible out and explain to me why that's just not good to do in front of the kids, I'm all for it. But
that's good.
Just disrespecting him, and especially in front of the kids or family, is, gosh, that makes me cringe when I say it now. I'm like, I used to do that all the time. What was wrong with me?
So good. All right. Well, thank you so much. And also happy 30th anniversary. That is awesome. That is something to celebrate.
This awesome podcast. I do have one more question though.
Yeah.
The most important question of the whole podcast. I'm just kidding. This is our closing. What are you guys having for dinner tonight?
I don't know. I got some nice crab cakes in there.
Concession stand at the baseball game.
We're headed out to
hot
the
dogs.
baseball game.
It's ever out there, if anything.
We're pretty busy. We still stay pretty busy. Yeah. So
we went to go out for dinner the other night, and the place we went to had no food. So
gosh,
how well we planned that.
Nikki, what are you having?
DoorDash.
We are leaving for Ohio tomorrow, and I stopped at Dollar General after getting my lower braces on, and I got egg rolls and little dumplings, and Eric's making rice. So
Nice.
my husband is so sweet in this. He's out there making dinner for us right now.
Oh,
What do you have?
That's awesome.
I
That's
have
gonna
no
be-
idea what we're having.
I'm hungry though.
We are all
It's
killing
late.
it tonight, let me tell you.
So Nikki,
Yeah,
are you
we're-
guys gonna be at the reunion next week?
We're going to be in Ohio, but I think we're leaving before the reunion. Eric has
bummer.
baseball tryout. I don't know. We could be swayed. I don't know. Eric has baseball tryouts, and the boys really wanted to go to the fair, and they will be gone the whole week. So we'll see, but we will be up in that area. Or when are you heading to Findlay then?
We're gonna be in Indiana on Thursday night. We'll be in Findlay on Saturday morning.
Yeah.
We'll just be missing you. So
Oh, that's such a
bummer.
bummer.
yeah.
Mm.
Well, you
That
never
is
know.
bummer.
You could talk Eric into it.
You
I'll let
never
handle
know. We
that. You
might-
can
we
text
might
him.
have
You're like,
to-
go golfing. No, just kidding.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Samantha and John, you guys are a joy. So impressed.
thanks.
Really, really likable. Would love to get some time with you guys sometime. It just,
Yeah.
I mean,
I was
as good
thinking
as
the
you-
same thing.
yeah, you guys are awesome.
That'd be
Well,
great.
next
Yeah.
time you
So
guys
you-
come in town, maybe
Okay.
Jonathan, we can all do a dinner or something. That would be
That'd be
great.
Yeah,
Love that.
I'll cook.
We'll have Samantha cook it though. She's a great
Perfect.
cook.
Oh, amen.
That way we'll know what we're having that night.
yeah.
We all need to go
I'll put
forage
in
dinner
something
now.
good. Well, thank you
Alright.
guys so much. We
Yeah,
really
thank you.
appreciate it. It was very
It's nice meeting you.
fun. You
Nice meeting you.
too.
See you
you
next
next time,
time,
mamas.
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 Wow, that was terrible. No.
Oh, that
Bye,
was
guys.
so
Thank you
good.
so much.
Bye.
That was awesome. Enjoy your anniversary. Soak it in
Thank
Yes,
and
you.
happy
enjoy that game.
anniversary.
Yeah. All righty. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Take care.